The morning dawned fresh and bright with sunshine. Only occasionally did it storm in Never, and then only when it was necessary to coax a pirate battle to a screaming, dramatic pitch. Annabelle yawned and stretched and scouted around the floor for the place where she had cast her suspenders. She snatched them out of a pile of dirty socks. There you are. Fetch climbed out of his hammock and cocked a suspicious side-eye at Annabelle, apparently unsure whether she was animal, vegetable, or mineral. "Come get some breakfast," Sammy called from the kitchen. He wore a handkerchief and tied it around his middle like an apron. Annabelle helped herself to a bowl. Swallowing a mouthful, her stomach heaved, and she set the bowl down. Sir Raymond wasn't exaggerating when he mentioned the dangers of the Lost Boys' cooking. She'd have to find a way to get some fresh fish from the lagoon again, even if she had to harpoon them with Fetch's cutlass. "Thanks, Sammy, but I'm not hungry this morning. Maybe lunch, though." "When are we heading out to the lagoon?" Annabelle asked. Fetch, who was sitting on his bunk pulling his boots up, let his second boot drop to the floor. He gestured around the hideout. "You can't come with us to the lagoon. Look at this place. It's disgusting," Annabelle snorted. "And whose fault is that?" Fetch waved his hand in dismissal and continued. "Who'll do the cleaning if you come along? Pirates and girls are right out. It's too dangerous for you," Annabelle snorted again. "Some pirates are girls. And good pirates, too. Did you ever hear of Anne Bonny?" Fetch sniffed and ignored the question. "There's no such thing as a good pirate." "I meant she could sail and fight as well as anybody else." Fetch folded his arms. "Can you even swim?" At that, Annabelle laughed. "Asking an old mudlark if she can swim. I can swim, Fetch me pipe, and I'll best you in a race any time of day or night." Annabelle didn't quite like the way Fetch's eyes lit up at the challenge. Probably he could swim like a fish, and if she made a poor showing, he'd have an excuse to keep her away from any more trips to the lagoon. But she really could swim, and if she could keep up, they would have to concede her some credit. There was a brief wait while Annabelle extracted a pair of abandoned long johns from the bottom of a pile of clothes. The long johns were more holy than wholesome, but that was all right. They'd be getting a thorough wash soon. The boys were divided in their opinions of the likely winner. Some thought it was a waste of time, since Fetch could obviously beat a girl, but others thought such a handy fisherwoman must be good enough to make the contest worth watching. Before long, they were standing at the top of a small cliff, perhaps 20 feet high, looking down into the turquoise lagoon below. "All right," said Fetch. "First one to touch Maruna's rock wins." The rock he pointed to was the same Annabelle had visited before. Again, it was occupied by several mermaids. "The mermaids will judge." Annabelle curled her toes over the edge of the embankment. She peeked over at Fetch. His lips were pressed into a grim line. She was getting to him. Good. It served him right for trying to order her around. Annabelle brought her fingers down to her toes, bent her knees, and with the wave of a tiny flag, launched herself out into the lagoon, kicking her feet and tucking her head into the cold water. She kicked and kicked until she surfaced again, stretching her arms out long and pulling the water through with all her might. The water frothed with foam all around, and she dared not even try to peep at Fetch, but concentrated on her stroke, snatching only the quickest breath every fifth or sixth stroke. She settled in, pulling fiercely. A moment later, she took a peek at her opponent to the right. They were neck and neck, and they'd covered about half the distance to the middle of the lagoon. She pulled harder, but couldn't help peeking again and taking alarm to see that Fetch was edging her out. Now he was pulling away. Annabelle gritted her teeth. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she spied something long and fierce angling for Fetch's foot. She gasped. A barracuda had attached itself to Fetch's leg. Now he was writhing and thrashing, trying to pry the vicious fish off his leg. Annabelle launched toward it, hands spread to grasp the fish's tail. She swept the water and gripped, surprising the creature with her attack. It released its jaws and darted away into the lagoon. Fetch came up gasping for air, just ahead of Annabelle. Both stared at each other for a solid half a minute before Fetch finally spoke, choking as he said the words. "Call it a draw. Can you swim?" Annabelle stretched out a hand. Fetch winced. "I can barely tread water." Annabelle brought his arm around her shoulder, paddling with her other arm in long, gentle strokes until they finally reached the shore. As she paddled, she called out to the nearest lost boy on the bank. "Quick, Sammy, run back to the hideout and grab my apron. Hurry as fast as you can." Another minute saw them settled on the grassy bank. Annabelle carefully examined the wound, while pale-faced Fetch made no resistance. "Cheer up, Fetch," Annabelle said. "Your wish is granted. I shall take up my needle and do a job of sewing for you this very minute." She took a cautious peek at Fetch's face and added, "This is going to hurt." "Strange thing for fish. They wouldn't attack me like that normally. Never done it before," Fetch muttered and balled his fist tightly, apparently preparing for the stick of Annabelle's needle. Annabelle glanced at the wound. The barracuda surely had taken a chunk out of him. But she had to admit, Fetch kept a very brave face while she pulled the needle in and out of the wound with neat little stitches. When she was finished, his face was white and his brow beaded with sweat. "That's going to be a scar to be proud of," she said, trying to console him. Fetch made a grim face. "I suppose it might be nice to have you along. You've proven yourself a good nurse." Fetch thrust out his hand for Annabelle to clasp. "I've proven myself a good surgeon," Annabelle said, but clasped his hand. "You have a deal.